All right, so it was a fairly uneventful week in the House, but a bipartisan bright spot was the unanimous passage on Tuesday of HB 709, which prohibits judicial enforcement of non-disclosure agreements with sexual abuse cases. This provision is one vote away from getting to the governor's desk now on HB 727, which we passed out of the House today, which also includes provisions to not allow Children's Division to take money from foster kids, as well as it includes the child marriage ban. You know, Silence should not be the price that abuse survivors must pay to receive restitution for the terrible wrongs they've suffered, and perpetrators should not be able to manipulate the settlement process to keep crime secret and enable them to abuse more children. It was disappointing, however, that Republicans in this building continued their assault on Missouri voters and Missouri workers by engaging in another marathon debate on repealing Proposition A's mandatory sick leave requirements. By trying to gut Prop A and pushing to repeal Amendment 3, Republicans are again proving that they only respect elections when they win them. That's not how a stable and functioning democracy should work. I'll take questions.
So the Ways and Means Committee loaded up a bill with flat tax, capital gains, circuit breaker, property tax cuts. Where do you see that as their goal, to put that $1 billion tax cut on the floor of the House and get it passed this year?
I'm going to let Del Taylor, who is my ranking member on Ways and Means, take that, because I think he's got a much clearer purview of what's going on.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Let me just bring up some notes, because a lot of things moving on right now. Chad Perkins had a bill in the House that we sent over to the Senate and was heavily debated and negotiated. And the Senate added a number of things to it. What we would consider probably one of the biggest items is a far more robust circuit breaker to assist our seniors. I think the goal there was to try and add some balance. If we're going to offer these large capital gains cuts for what many of us would see as our, wealthiest Missourians, then we should do something at the other end for our most vulnerable Missourians. So I applaud the Senate for being able to negotiate that, but it just seems that the House's response to that has been to take what was a pretty good Senate bill from Senator Schnelting that would address our National Guard workers when they're being deployed, giving them some tax relief. What the House chose to do instead was to load that up with a lot of the same House provisions minus the negotiated Senate settlements. So I found that to be quite disingenuous. And again, I think it just really points to where some of my colleagues are so strenuous on looking for these tax breaks for the rich, and not necessarily being amenable to compromising for tax credits for our working families and for our seniors. So we did see that in Ways and Means. It came through pretty quickly. Again, being the super minority, there wasn't much we could do other than try and maybe delay the quorum vote, and then they passed that through. So unfortunately, we'll be seeing that the Senate's bill, Schnelting, I think will be getting referred to rules, and we may see that come back with the House's pretty onerous tax cuts.
So Representative Riley a few minutes ago said that they're trying to keep all their options open, asking him why there hasn't been a vote on Representative Perkins' bill. And he really was not committal on which one would be the priority. Do y'all have any indication that they're interested in passing the Representative Perkins' bill it's kind of about 50-50 between, as you say, tax cuts for the wealthy and then relief for people at the lower end?
I think it'll be interesting to see which one does come forward. Personally, I find, most of the tax cuts that we're doing to be pretty onerous, given the challenges that this legislation, that this body has been having in meeting some of its current goals and commitments to child care, to education. We're seeing some things in the budget on the Senate side to try and restore things that the House took away, but fundamentally I don't have a lot of confidence in the things that we're doing in the House around tax cuts right now. So what we do see in the House, I'm not necessarily so favorable on, but I do hold that, the Senate has been negotiating in good faith. that they've added some things that brought some balance to the bill. So I hope that what we do see does try and reflect some of that balance.
Thank you.
Representative, you mentioned HB 709, which is the non-disclosure, like how that was bipartisan. Sometimes that language is tied to other legislation that would get rid of the statute of limitations for child sex abuse lawsuits. Why is that like not bipartisan at the same time? Like, are there concerns about, like, from insurance companies, or what is the concern for that portion of legislation? There's similar bills in the Senate.
That's a great question, and honestly, I'm not sure if I have. I can exactly tell you where the consternation is on their side of the aisle about it. I honestly don't know that I could speak to that. I'm not sure.
So Senator Roberts, he got a bill through the Downtown and Rural Revitalization Act. So that's in House committees now, as I'm sure you know. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that bill, and if you are prioritizing, getting that to the floor.
Which bill is that? Remind me, who's?
It's like providing a tax credit so that developers in downtown areas in the state can recoup some of the costs to convert like vacant space to office space, or not to office space, to commercial space or residential space.
Yeah, I'll let Del.
Yeah. That didn't come through Ways and Means, or at least I'm not expecting it to, but let's just be honest. I mean, fundamentally, downtown St. Louis is struggling in so many ways. It is atrocious that we have such a beautiful several high-rise towers that are completely vacant right now. So I've had several meetings during the interim with Senator Roberts and other developers, and I think this tax credit it's moving in the right direction. I mean, we're talking about trying to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to revitalize several landmarks in the downtown city area. So the state recognizing the importance of St. Louis as a draw and an economic hub, this is a very important bill that we do want to see move forward. And I hope it'll do some great things for our city. I hope it'll do some great things for our region. I hope it'll do some great things for our state and really continue to attract great people and great business to our area.
I'm just going to add to that as well. That bill, as well as the House companion bills, came through the Economic Development Committee here in the House, which I sit on. Sorry, I'm Representative Jeremy Dean out of the 132nd, downtown Northwest Springfield. So not only will this bill help our major metropolitan areas like Kansas City and St. Louis, it's also going to help the third largest city, which is Springfield, all the way to our main streets as well. So some of these smaller rural communities are really going to benefit from this. It's going to bring job growth. It's going to bring steady housing for these individuals that are out in rural Missouri who have really been struggling to find the safe and affordable housing. And so this is a great bill that hopefully we will get some real movement on that's going to help all across our state with our housing issues that we've got. So.
Representative Fogel, I've got some questions about the budget now that the Senate has finished its markup. The Senate added $300 million for the foundation formula, cut $50 million from the Most Scholars program, added 169 individual earmark items.
Yes, they did. Rudy, what did I tell you my 3 priorities were?
Which were?
Those 3 things. No, fully funding the foundation formula, getting rid of vouchers, and fully funding the child care subsidy. Those are the 3 things that this caucus has talked about every time we've been on this microphone, and it was a good day for us.
Okay, so the items added to the budget,
Yes.
the House, they cut 57 that the House added.
Correct.
Added 169. The universal general revenue is about more than $500 million involved in those. What would you say if those got funded but the education foundation formula didn't?
I think the most important thing we do as a General Assembly is fully fund our public schools back home. So if we do not do that, I wouldn't feel comfortable funding any of the other services in the budget. That's, we fund things in a certain way, and the education budget is first for a reason. So if we're not meeting the statutory minimum as outlined by this body, then I think the rest of the budget should be called into question.
So in the House budget process, there is some identification of who's supporting which addition they want in the budget, either in the subcommittees or in the markup process, and people are offering amendments. But the The House committee substitutes add a lot of these things. The Senate markup session, nobody talked basically except Senator Huff. Should there be a system that identifies who is asking for items to be added to the budget?
Yeah, I won't speak for the process in the Senate. I've very publicly commended the chairman in the House for the transparency that we hold, or the bar we hold ourselves to in the House, making sure everybody knows who's supporting dollars, where they're going. Chairman Huff does a great job of crafting the Senate budget, but I'll tell you, as somebody who's very interested in what's in there, not necessarily how I wanted to spend my weekend requesting Senate audios and sitting down listening to hours of budget testimony or Senator Huff's words, but that's how he chooses to do it, and that's his right as a chairman.
But should there be a process that every one of these items is somehow identified with the legislator? Who, I mean, you may know who it is, but the public doesn't know who is from
Absolutely. Transparency is key, but I will say as a member of the minority party, oftentimes I get my things done when a member of the majority is willing to do it or when the chairman is willing to do it himself. And I know that sometimes there's a motivation for Democrats to not have public wins. So though, of course, I support transparency at every turn, I also see a value in trusting the roles of the chairs and making sure my members' priorities are funded. And I'm going to do what I can do to make sure that happens.
After being involved in all these conversations about the budget, how prepared is Missouri for any kind of economic downturn with all the stuff happening at the federal level right now?
Absolutely. That is I would say, $1 million question, but the price tag is obviously way higher than that. We have such uncertainty coming out of the federal administration. Every single day I read an article or talk to a department who is now trying to decide what the future of certain services is going to look like, what the future of our state is going to look like. These unvetted ideas coming out of the federal administration make it very hard to craft a thoughtful budget back home. We've had conversations about Medicaid reimbursement cuts. We've had conversations about the federal assistance freeze. It is difficult to be responsible with the $50 billion budget here when on any given day the president could have an idea that cuts $3 billion from that. So I am concerned, as we all should be, both sides of the aisle, about what some of those cuts at the federal level will look like. I think a good example is the Head Start program. I want to commend Governor Kehoe and his remarks that it sounds like that is a program that he is willing to backfill at the state level, but we can't do that with all programs, and I hope that President Trump remembers that.
I have a question for you relating to the financial stability for the future. There was a bill, I believe it was heard yesterday, debated on the floor, to institute not quite a gold standard for Missouri, but some side dollar, I guess, backed by that. Given the fact that we don't know what kind of financial stability we'll have, is that something that what's your perspective on it in that?
Yeah, I have not been intimately involved in the discussions or debate around that bill, but I will say we as a state want to pay our bills and want people's bills to be paid, and until we can effectively do that, I wouldn't want to entertain any conversation about gold and silver. All right. Thank you all. Oh, so sorry. Thanks. Is that it? All right. Have a great weekend, y'all.